Welcome to another Trackmania Turbo Trackmaster tutorial. This time around, we're featuring what may be the final one, because, as I said at the very beginning with these, I'm only going to do the ones I actually got the Trackmaster medal on, and this is the final one as of now that I got that medal on. There hasn't actually been any that I technically gone back to do again after I recorded them. There has been a few of when I started the series I didn't have by the time I'm finishing it, but I was able to get those before I recorded past that for the first time. Meaning, I think 52 was one of them that I didn't have when I started, but I was able to get that when I've only recorded through like 14 or something. But nonetheless, as of now, this will be the final one because I haven't actually gotten any more Trackmasters beyond this point, whether it's before 73 or after 73, I haven't gotten any. I ain't saying I won't go back eventually and get some, but I ain't saying I will either. I don't know if I physically can. I don't know if I'm good enough. But if I do, I will go ahead and do the tutorial for it. But as of now, this will be the final one, like, in a row. So anyway, getting into it, this is 73, aka meaning the F1 car. And theoretically, this is the hardest one out of all of them because it's the highest number. And y'all can make your own assumptions on it, but I will say this. As with all of them, the F1 car is overall the easiest to drive. It's not the one I'm best at because it's the fastest and I'm always better in the slower cars. But it is still easy to drive. The track, though, is actually pretty easy to begin with. No steering motions for actually a relatively extended amount. Or really. No steering really up even to this point. Like, you've already passed some stuff, you've already done some jumps, no steering to this point. Easy enough. And it's just barely steering at that. It's just steer a little bit into it. But this is where it gets interesting. Honestly, I'm quite terrible with wall rides in this game. But this particular one, at least for me, is the easiest of wall rides. Because usually when there's wall rides in this game, the surface changes, so therefore you have to do something different while doing the wall ride than doing the rest, as well as counting in that is a wall ride and having to change your motion for that as well, and not just the surface it's on. But luckily, this is the same surface as the rest, so you just have to account for the wall ride factor being momentum. Momentum is key in wall rides, but this one's also the easiest wall ride in my opinion as well. Because the F1 is so powerful, you don't actually have to factor into that too much. You pretty much just stay as low as possible to not hit that. But you do go out a little bit just so you can make the next turn with more speed. Go as close as possible without hitting that wall, but you can go ahead and go out a bit here just so you can make the next turn. Not too much, because the farther you go out while in the middle of the wall ride means you lose a lot of speed. And overall, it ain't worth it. But with no steering angle, this is as far out as I went. So overall, that's the optimal way of doing it, because I didn't steer. So that ended up working out to carry more momentum through this turn. Drop down low enough to where you don't hit that, but also not far enough down where you may not make the next turn. Because as y'all can start seeing about here, I just barely made that. But doing that means I'm carrying optimal speed. For the next turn, it's a little bit of steering motion to not hit that, but no big deal. Which is a good thing, because you don't want much steering motion, because this is probably the only time I'm going to say this, because I hate wall rides. But this loop is harder than that wall ride. Because it's a darned big loop. And even though it's the same surface, there's different surfaces on both sides. So if you have it stable, which is pretty much what you need here to make it anyway, you're good. But if you just barely don't, I got darned close there. I scared the holy snikes out of myself doing this one multiple times. As you can see, this is the one and only time I got the Trackmaster on it too. But nonetheless, I did it. I didn't quite get on that surface, but I got too close for comfort to it. I'm also upside down here, so the steering's inverted as well. And yeah, it's not the easiest section to do, but you have to be in the middle pretty much for these to begin with. So there's not all that much more to really learn for doing it. It's just hard to actually execute. But if you do, you're good for this bit, and you want to stay in the middle too, because it changes from that different surface. That doesn't necessarily make you go slower in a straight line to dirt, which does make you go slower in a straight line. So still stay in the middle there. And you want to be in the middle, especially so, because again, it changed surfaces yet again. But if you do that, you're pretty much good at this point to needing to stay stable, because the next section you actually have to sweep a little bit. You can go either to the left or to the right here, because you don't really want to stay in the middle, because the middle is the longest line to the finish. For that particular part, you can go ahead and start moving before you're completely done with the loop, because again, no matter what surface you're on, as long as it ain't dirt for this particular one, it's still the same speed when you're going in a straight line. So you can go ahead and start planning quite a bit before you're actually to the point in which you have to make a decision, so that way you're more stable going into it. And again, you don't actually have to be perfectly stable. As long as you don't hit anything, you're good, but it's still probably overall best to stay up as close to the inside of that hitting as possible, just because that's the least track used. But even if you ain't perfect here, as long as you get to the left or right without hitting anything while staying full throttle, you're good to line. This whole event is actually full throttle, but it may arguably be the hardest of the full throttle events of Zone, mainly because there is a wall ride in it, which is different than the other ones of Zone. And there's also, I think, what may be the longest of loops that of Zone as well. And this is the last one I'm going to show, just because that's as high as I could get within the Trackmasters. So I hope you all enjoyed this through the weeks, months, I can't remember how long it's been. Early 2018-ish. March, I think, was when this game was free. I can't even remember now. But nonetheless, I'm doing this for a good bit, and I've done a good bit of these. I hope you all have learned something from all of these. And the culminating event is the highest I've had ever. As I said in the previous one, it was the highest to that point. But this is the highest ever overall rank. Because I'm 64th in America, first in Kentucky. Some of the other ones I may have been slightly higher in America, but not like first in Kentucky or whatever. But this one I'm ending off with, I think, what would sort of kind of be the overall best in terms of all of the rankings combined. So that seems a good enough way to culminate. First in Kentucky, ending it off, as well as the first one I sort of kind of started with not a tutorial, but of a video with being 12. That was the first video of Trackmaster. Technically, just not a tutorial of it. So it seems like a good way to end there, and honestly it would be the ending by default, because that's as far as I've gone. So as always, I hope you all enjoyed this, and as always, yeehaw!